Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven speaking to you from Jerusalem, Israel, the center of the world. Today is 8th day of the month of Kislev, 5781. It's the 24th day of November, 2020. Did I say Jerusalem, the center of the world? We're going to talk about that entire concept very soon. This coming Shabbat, we read Parshat Vayetze. Vayetze, and it begins Genesis 28:10, concludes Genesis 32:3. It opens up in Yaakov. Yaakov left Beersheba and he went to Haran. And he arrived at the place and lodged there because the sun had set. And he took some of the stones of the place and placed them at his head. And he lay down in that place. I'm not going to give it away. I forget what they call them. When you give away the ending too soon. I'm not going to give it away. Keep you in suspense for a few minutes. But of course, you all know the story. Vayetze, Yaakov mi Beersheba, vayelech Harana. And Yaakov left Beersheba and he went to Haran, Vayetze, and he left. Actually, Vayetze more literally means, and he went out. And this is Yaakov's going out into the world. Remember, he was born halak, sort of unformed, a child of tremendous potential, but had to be formed, had to experience things. So he experienced what he experienced at home vis-a-vis his brother, his father, his mother, the blessing. We talked about that at length last week. And now he's emerged. He has to leave because his brother's threatened to kill him because his brother feels he stole his blessing from his father. But it was essential for Yaakov to leave home because the qualities that he needed to make his way in the world, he'd had to earn in the world. He had the spiritual, he had the inner qualities. Remember, he was a Yoshev Ba'olim, he was a dweller of tents. He was a man of thought, a man of contemplation, introspective, whereas his brother Esau was the outgoing, man of action, which is why, as we recall, that's why Yitzchak felt that Esau was worthy of the blessing and the birthright. But so Yaakov had to go earn it. So thanks to his brother who made the threat, he had to leave home. He had to pack his bags and get out. So that's where we're at in the Parsha. Before we go on with the Parsha, the Temple Institute, and I would say the people of Israel, lost a great friend this week. Bill Gibson of Texas passed away earlier this week. I met Bill twice in my life. Bill was a Noahide pioneer, a Noahide leader. He created a community around himself and his wife Carol, who passed away just a few years ago, and their family. And Bill, if I had to describe Bill, I would use the words courageous, true, modest, a man of vision. I know I said modest, but I also want to say humility, and a man that reached out and shared with others his vision, his faith, his trust in Hashem. And I met Bill and Carol here in Israel, had a wonderful time. I knew Bill's work, but he was such a joy to be with, to spend time with. And we really connected. And then once again, a few years later, in Texas, spent a few days in Lubbock. And I'll never forget being invited into the Gibson homestead, where Bill and Carol and their children and grandchildren were all gathered around for a meal. And they didn't just welcome you to their table, they welcomed you to their family. You became family, and I feel like family. And I only regret that I won't be able to see Bill and Carol a third time. But their legacy and the love and the joy that they spread, I think, will live for a long time. And Bill and Carol were devoted to the people of Israel, the state of Israel, the Torah of Israel, and the God of Israel. That's how they lived their lives, with tremendous integrity and truth. So I wish that Bill's children and grandchildren will be comforted. May be comforted among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem, as we say, and have been saying for many, many thousands of years. And may, and I'm sure it will, may Bill's memory be for a blessing. Yeh zichro baruch. Okay. It's the 8th of Kislev. We're approaching Hanukkah. Days are getting shorter, nights are getting longer, darker. We mentioned last week that Kislev is the month of dreams. And one reason why it's the month of dreams is because in the Torah, all the dreams that occur in Bereshit, in Genesis, these famous dreams of Yaakov, Yosef, the two servants of Yosef, of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh himself, and all these dreams occurred. We read of all these dreams in our weekly Torah readings during this month of Kislev. That's how it works out. So, for no other reason, that's why Kislev is called the month of dreams. And I encourage everybody to be cognizant of your dreams. Listen to your dreams. You know, if when you wake from a dream, if you focus on the dream while it's still fresh in your mind, you'll have a better chance of remembering it later in the day. And if you write it down, they say, then you remember more and more. And a dream in Hebrew is called a chalom. And the chalom is the word is chet lamed mem, or chet lamed vav mem. And la chalom is the dream. And the root of the word contains a chet and a lamed, which is chol, which means empty, hollow. So a dream is like a hollow place in your inside your consciousness, which can then be influenced. It could be influenced by God. God can speak to you through your dream. God can fill that void. If you create a void for yourself, and if your intentions and if you're true, if you're good, if you're on the up and up, if you're seeking God, and you allow your dream to be a receptacle for a response. And then, of course, you have to interpret your dreams and understand them very, very carefully, because dreams can be very easily misread, misunderstood, and that can get us in trouble. So Yaakov leaves Beersheba, leaves Israel, goes to Haran, and he'll spend 20 years there. He's going to spend 7 years working in order to be able to marry Lavan's daughter, Rachel, who he loves. And then after Lavan switches Rachel with Leah, switches Rachel with Leah on the wedding night, and Yaakov discovers the next morning what has been done, and Lavan agrees that he'll let Yaakov marry Rachel also within 1 week, 7 days, if he works for another 7 years in order to earn her. And then after that, he agrees to work for 6 more years, in which he is focusing on creating his own wealth so that he can leave his father-in-law and go back to Israel. So I just gave the general outlines of the parasha, and it's a fascinating parasha, and this is where most of the action that's focused around Yaakov takes place in this week's parasha. 20 years, yes, 12 children are recorded in this parasha, the 11 sons and Dinah, the daughter. Binyamin, who was going to be born back in the land of Israel, has not been born yet as of the end of Parsha Vayetze. And so it's been a very busy time for Yaakov, these 20 years, and he's made it. He's succeeded, but I want to go back and focus naturally on the very first event that occurred as Yaakov left home before he even exited the land of Israel. And of course, this is the famous passage, I'm just going to read it out loud, of the dream. Very beginning of Vayetze, chapter 28, verse 10. And Yaakov left Beersheba, and he went to Haran. And he arrived at the place and lodged there because the sun had set. And he took some of the stones of the place and placed them at his head. And he lay down in that place. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the ground, and at its top reached to heaven. And behold, angels of God were ascending and descending it. And behold, Hashem was standing over him, and he said, I am Hashem, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac, Yitzchak. The land upon which you are lying, the land upon which you are lying, to you I will give it, and to your seed. And your seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall gain strength westward and eastward and northward and southward. And through you shall be blessed all the families of the earth, and through your seed. And behold, I am with you, and I will guard you wherever you go, and I will restore you to this land, for I will not forsake you until I have done what I have spoken concerning you. And Yaakov awakened from his sleep, and he said, Indeed, Hashem is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was frightened, and he said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. And Yaakov arose early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had placed at his head, and he set it up as a monument, and he poured oil on top of it. And he named the name of the place Beit El, meaning the house of God. But Luz was originally the name of the city. And Yaakov uttered a vow, saying, If God will be with me, and he will guard me on his way upon which I am going, and he will give me bread to eat and a garment to wear, and if I return in peace to my father's house, and Hashem will be my God, then this stone which I have placed as a monument shall be a house of God, and everything that you give me I shall surely tithe to you. So that is the entire episode of the dream of Yaakov, and the ladder of Yaakov, Sulam Yaakov, the ladder that he dreamed of. So Yaakov arrives at this place. And Vayifka b'makom, it says in Hebrew, and that's translated as he arrives, but it sort of means he was struck in that place. He didn't simply arrive in that place. It like hit him like a ton of bricks when he got there. Just there was a different atmosphere, a different air pressure. Something was different. Vayifka b'makom. And of course, there's that word makom. Where have we heard that before? We heard it when Abraham went to Mount Moriah with Yitzchak for the Akedah, for the binding of Yitzchak. And it's referred to as Hamakom. I'll show you the place, Hamakom from afar. Hamakom, the place. So there's an allusion here. It's the same place, essentially. The place, why does Yaakov feel this change of atmosphere, this change of reality? Because this is where his father was put on the altar. And he arrived at the place, and he lodged there, because the sun had set. Okay. So, in Hebrew, it's kivah hashemesh. The sun arrived. It's not the exact wording used in Hebrew usually for the sun had set. The sun arrived. Why is it telling us this? If it wants to say that it's nighttime, say that it's nighttime. So, again, Midrash, a tradition tells us that God caused the sun to set early that day, so that Yaakov wouldn't be able to move on. He would have to stay at that place. So it's a setup here. Again, this is a midrashic spice that's added to the story that gives us a different perspective, a different understanding. And he took some of the stones of the place and placed them at his head and laid down in that place. Again, there's that word place, makom. It's all over the place here. Ha-makom, makom, makom. It's all over. And he places these stones. Now notice, it's avnei hamakom, the stones of the place, plural. And he dreamed. Okay? This is the dream where he sees a great ladder standing firmly on the earth and reaching up toward heavens. And there are angels, these malachim, that are going up and going down this ladder. And at the top of the ladder is this presence of God. And so this is quite a dream. And there's these connecting angels that are making a connection between that height, that unattainable height, and the place where Yaakov's head is, our earth. And then this presence of God, Nitzavalav, I think standing over him. Again, this is the same wordage terminology used when Avraham was at his tent and the three men came. But before the three men came, God appeared to Avraham, and he was, and I think it might have even said of the 3 men that they were standing above him. It's an interesting phrasing, meaning there's something going on here. There's a vision, there's a connection. And so Hashem says to him, I am Hashem, the God of Avraham, your father, and the God of Yitzchak. The land upon which you are lying to you, I will give it to you and your seed. So then the question comes up. So he's lying in a specific spot, but God is referring to the entire land of Israel, of course. So again, Midrash tells us, and this is going to weave into what we're going to say later, that the entire land of Israel was, as it were, rolled up like a bedroll and placed under Yaakov's head at that time. So when God said, the place upon which you are sleeping, you are lying, will be yours, it was not only figuratively, but it was literally the entire land of Israel. It was all at that moment concentrated right under Yaakov. And then he goes on to tell that their seed shall be as the dust of the earth, and you will go ufaratsta, a beautiful expression in Hebrew. Ufaratsta yama, vakedma, v'tzafona, v'negba. There's a song using these words in Hebrew, a very popular song. Your seed shall spread, really. Your strength shall spread eastward, westward, and eastward, and northward, and southward. So he's getting this wonderful blessing, very similar to the blessing that Avraham received from God and that Yitzchak received from God. And of course, it's time for him to receive it, because he's heading out in life. And I will not forsake you, and I will restore you to this land. So even though Yaakov is leaving this land, his father never left this land. This is the land that's promised to him, and now he has to flee it while his brother stays here. So he's walking into complete uncertainty. So God is giving him comfort here. He's telling him it's all going to be okay. The blessing is still yours. The Yerusha, the inheritance, the heritage, the legacy is still yours. And you will achieve it, and I will bring you back here. Okay. And Yaakov wakes up, and he's in awe. In fact, he says, Vayira vayomar ma norah hamakom hazeh. How awesome, norah, awesome this place is, how awe-inspiring, how beyond description. That's what norah means. Sometimes it's translated as awful, as it being full of awe. But of course, today the word awful sounds like a negative. But it's awesome. It's beyond really description. That's what norah means. And he says this is none other than Beit Elohim, the house of God, and Sha'ar Shamayim, the gate of heaven. Like, this is it. Yaakov realizes this is it. I'm at the place. There's a connection here. And so then he arose. It said he woke up. He said all this, and then later it says, the next verse, and Yaakov arose early in the morning, he took up the stone. So did he fall back asleep? I mean, it sounds like he fell back asleep, which is astonishing, because you would think after this dream, he'd be shaking. It's very fascinating that Yaakov, it would seem that he fell back asleep, as it's told us later that he arose in the morning. First he was awakened. He was awakened from his dream. And then he rose. And he took the stone that he had placed at his head and set it up as a monument, and he poured oil on top of it. Now, at the beginning, we were told that he placed his head upon stones, and now it's a single stone. So what happened? How did these stones become a stone? Again, Midrash steps in and says that when Yaakov placed stones at his head, as it is clearly described at the beginning of the story, he actually placed 12 stones, representing the 12 tribes, the 12 children that will come from his loins and form the tribes of Israel. And from them, he united them, put them together for a pillow, and rested his head on it. Now, the next morning, they were fused together. That's what our Midrash comes to tell us. The same 12 stones, now they're fused together because he was ahead of time. He made them into one, united them into one in God's presence, in this place, right? The place of the Akedah. We know the place of the Akedah, the place of the binding of Isaac, was also the place where Noah built his altar. We know it's the place where Cain and Abel made their altar. We know it's the place where Adam, who according to Midrash, atoned for Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve atoned for their chet, of their sin of eating of the fruit from the tree that they weren't supposed to touch. And he built an altar in this place. And we also know, al pi Midrash, al pi our tradition, but it all makes sense, that this is really the place of Gan Eden, of the Garden of Eden itself. And of course, ultimately, this is the place of the Holy Temple, and we know that the place of the Holy Temple, the place where the temple stood, was the place of Gan Eden. And that's why the altar is where it is, because that's where Adam made his original chet, his original sin of eating from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And so this is the place where we atone. And this is the place from whose earth Adam was created. And that's why we have an altar of earth. Because the altar is an extension of who we are. So this is the place. This is the place. And right there on that place, Yaakov wakes up and says, this is the place, is the house of Hashem. This place is literally a mikdash, a holy temple. That's what this place is. He put it all together in that moment. And then, of course, he says his famous response in verse 20, and Yaakov uttered a vow and said, if God will be with me, and he will guard me on this way, upon which I am going, and he will give me bread to eat and a garment to wear, and if I return in peace to my father's house, and Hashem will be my God, then this stone which I have placed as a monument shall be a house of God, and everything that you give me I will surely tithe to you. So basically, Yaakov just set out the future of Am Yisrael, the future of Israel, the future of the world, with his response to this awesome dream that he had at this place, at this time. And it just, I guess you could say it inspired him to greatness. So he arises. He makes this monument with this stone, pours oil on it, and then he sort of makes a transaction. I don't know how you turn this into an adjective, but he sort of says, he bases his relationship on an if. If I make it back, then this is all going to happen. So basically, he's placing all his trust in Hashem. He's not planning what he's going to do for the next 20 years. He's planning what the end result is going to be, which is a holy temple in this place. As for the next 20 years, he's placing his trust in Hashem. And so when Hashem brings him back to the land, this all goes into motion. Yaakov's vow goes into motion. But this rock, this stone that was under his head, that will become the foundation stone of this temple, which is literally what he's saying. It's going to become a foundation stone of a future temple that's going to be built to house Hashem's presence, his nearness, his limitlessness. And so what is this rock? This Evan in Hebrew, this stone. So we know that in the Holy Temple, in the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKodeshim, that the Aron HaBrit, the Ark of the Covenant, rested on the foundation stone. Right? Under it was this stone, which protruded from the floor by just a few centimeters. The ark was placed on it, and it's known as the Even Hashtiya, meaning in English the foundation stone. Tashdit is a modern version of that word, meaning foundation, infrastructure. Basically, the stone is Even Hashtiya, is the foundation stone of creation. It's the basic infrastructure. From it came the infrastructure of creation, and it is the basis of God created the world, and at the center of this creation, center physically, center spiritually, center metaphysically, he placed this Even Hashtiya, this foundation stone. And all these things tied to it, right? Everything that takes place where this foundation stone is found on earth has this connection. It's a portal, actually. It's the navel of creation. It's through which creation is nourished every day. And creation, we must remember, is nourished every day. In fact, in our tefillah, in our morning prayer, we say that God basically recreates the world every day, every morning. Every morning is new. Every morning is different, and every morning it wouldn't be if God weren't busy creating it, busy making it happen. And this connection point, as it were, between our physical, three-dimensional, four-dimensional world, our world of finiteness with God's infinite being, is via, as it were, this portal known as the Even Hashtiya. And so the Midrash goes to tell us that Yaakov, he, put it all together. He took these 12 stones, and in a way, he helped to forge this Even Hashtiya. Go try to figure that. And after he awoke and set it up and determined it was going to be the foundation of this place where God's presence could be here amongst us, it then said that God forced that stone way down deep into the center of the earth, where it would protrude or reemerge right where the temple would stand. So one way of looking at this is simply that the stone, its location, its being is very fluid. And of course it's very fluid. It's not we're not talking about ultimately not about a stone as we see a stone is a domem. It has very little life in it. But that's what we see. But at the heart of this Evan, it's a passageway, and so you understand why the location of the Holy Temple is so important, and how God revealed that location first to Abraham, and again to Yaakov, and of course Yitzchak, who was at that place as well. We can never forget his part of the story, and of course later to King David and Samuel the prophet, who David then brought the ark into Jerusalem, and eventually brought in the tabernacle and then the ark into Jerusalem on the place where the Holy Temple would stand. And of course his son, King Solomon, built the first Holy Temple, and that all began with our father Yaakov. First night out, first night away from home. Can you imagine that? First night away from home, and he has this awesome dream. And, as they say, you can't make this stuff up. This is an awesome dream. And again, his response to it is no less awesome. This is going to be a house of God. This is going to be, what it's all about, because the experience that Yaakov experienced, this being in this place of God's presence, he wanted the world to experience. And I imagine he understood that when God said that through you shall be a blessing, through you shall be blessed all the families of the earth, and through your seed, I think he interpreted that into building of this holy temple, this mikdash, this sanctified area, sanctified and recognized and acknowledged area where we can draw close to, as can possibly be drawn to Hashem's presence in our world. So it's a very beautiful vision that Yaakov has, and then he goes on his way. And he lands in Haran. He's at the well, and he sees Rachel, and he just helps her. He helps her with rolling the stone. He gets this supernatural strength. And again, another stone. He's able to roll it off the well, the job of what would take many shepherds to do. And he was able to do it once in order to enable Rachel, who he just saw and was love at first sight, and he was inspired and moved that stone. And there's probably no better way to win the heart of a shepherd girl than to roll a stone from off the well so she can water her flocks. And we mentioned earlier the rest of the story. Of course, Lavan, when he heard that Yaakov was in town, he ran out to greet him. Lavan is an interesting character. How do you say his name? Laban? Is that how you say it in English? In Hebrew, it's Lavan. Literally means white. His name means white. Like Esav was also named Edom. Edom meaning red because he liked the red porridge, the red lentils. And this man's name happens to be white, Lavan. But he's an interesting character. He seems he deceived Yaakov. Yaakov's life, of course, involves tremendous deception in it. He seemingly deceived his father, deceived his brother. He seemingly, then he's deceived now by Lavan. So you can say what goes around comes around. He's very bitter about that, but he goes along with it. When he leaves 20 years later, Lavan, accuses him of being deceptive. And I think he, in response, accuses Lavan of being deceptive. There's a lot of deception here. And later on, there's going to be more deception. His sons deceived the men of Shechem. We'll be reading about that very soon. And there's a lot of deception. And it's a serious subject. It's something that you have to... Why was that? This is the guy that God wanted to carry on. And... God could have written a different script for him. So there was something had to happen here. And we may read as deception, we may read it as in other ways. And certainly we see it as being, it had to happen. And it all happened for a reason. But it's something that, we can reflect upon. Anyway, like I said before, Yaakov has the 12 children, and then God speaks to him and says, it's time to go back. I'm bringing you back, just like I said I would. Time to pack your bags. We're going to leave it at that right here, because here's the music. I thank you very much for being with me. Temple Talk.